There we go. All right. Welcome to another scene set in the world of darkness, Rage Across New York. You know how this goes. You know how my intros go. They're very familiar to you. Yes, indeed. We set the scene on the porch of the Strider's cabin. Silverfang Salt porch number 2. For any of the seekers, we'd never attempt to usurp your titles. The saltiest of porches. Jacob has summoned a cub to meet with him, as he has been informed that Joe himself has been looking for Jacob, and has just left him a note by the cub cabins, because he's not really too fussed about the timing of the issue. He spends a lot of time around the Strider's cabins when he's not at work, and has told him to meet with him by the Strider's cabin. He's currently on the porch, drinking some tea, having a whale of time, actually relaxing for once, not facing people whose sexes are completely swapped, or self-punishment, or awkward conversations, crosses, crucifixions, riots, or murders. It's good to be at peace, he says, as he looks towards the red sky full of menacing dark clouds.
Joe will approach the cabin in Lupus. State for the record that Joe has either performed or has out of character. Is it the rite of dedication that allows you to have like your clothes and
there we go.
Sorry, out of character. Is it the rite of dedication that allows you to have your clothes and stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Joe has either done that or asked someone to help him do that. So that he has his clothes that he's wearing for the day, but he also has his weights on his and he's been practicing with his other forms today. So Joe basically approaches the porch. He doesn't enter onto it. He makes sure that he's within ice over onto his back and exposes his throat and his belly before he goes any further.
Jacob will just kind of give him a very, what do you say, casual gesture for him to rise up off of his back.
And while doing that, Joe will basically shift into Hamid, so that Jacob can see for himself that Joe still has his weights on his legs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe comes onto the porch and sort of shakily sits cross-legged on the porch in front of Jacob, and he says, "Morning, Ryan. You wanted to see me?"
Jacob takes a sip from his tea. Well, I hear it was you who was requested to look for me, but yes, I did need to discuss a few things with yourself. For the record, OC, you said you'd either done the rite of talisman dedication or found someone to do it for you. I'd just like to know that if you want to have something dedicated to you, you'd need to find someone to do it for you, as because you need to learn the rite first, unless you've made the rite.
I've been shown it by William.
Have you learned the right off of him?
I'm
I believe there's, because you have to make a roll to learn it.
he okay, we haven't done that, but he's it. So I didn't know if that.
Yeah, it's fine. We can just say you found someone. I'm just noting that like as a rules clarification for the future.
Okay,
But yeah,
that's fine. That's why I said either or, because I myself wasn't sure. But thank you.
yeah. Jacob. Well, he just puts his teacup on the table.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a long. The porch itself is kind of, it's just like
yeah,
it's kind of like being on a balcony but on the ground level. That sort of thing.
yeah.
Like a very short outstretch for a table.
You
Um,
know that Joe's face, while he is smiling without looking at you, like his face is friendly. His whole body is shaking, and he's clasping and unclasping his hands. It's almost like he's scratching the inside of one palm. But you know, otherwise he seems like the first time you met him.
I've heard that you were to seek me out for some express purpose. Do you
Yeah,
mind elaborating on what that is?
I, if memory serves, dead mother Chloe Ryan felt it would be good for me to learn from you, being um, being one of the Philodoxes of this sept and having a great deal of experience. Um, so I have been hoping to. I had been hoping to discuss possibly learning from you.
Let's see. Well, I won't backtrack on what we already discussed in our first meeting, as I believed perhaps a lot of what their mother wished for you to learn we already discussed in our prior meeting. Although this does present me with an opportunity, as I believe you sent me a letter or a note, would perhaps be more accurate.
I I did write. It was observations and a suggestion of how we might be able to fix the problem before it got worse.
Well, that's something I was going to chat to you about, because I believe you fell into a trap a lot of philodoxes often fall into. Did you know that we're often called, one of the earliest names was that of a mediator, not that of enforcers of the law? While we enforce the law, we're often called mediators. Like you said, to stop a problem before it begins. I see, and he literally takes out your note. I see in a lot of what you've written here attaches specific breaches of the litany to certain individuals.
I would I would like to offer a clarification, Ryan, if I may. Um, at the time in which I wrote the note, they were potential breaches. I did not mean for them to be interpreted as direct violations, as in having had happened. I just saw the potential for them to happen.
That's an important clarification to note, because if you had brought this to perhaps a truth catcher or someone else, action may have been taken and an investigation over something that had not been. Ultimately, breaches of a litany are not the only laws we abide to. They're just the most significant ones and the ones we've written down. Accusing someone of breaching a litany is a significant offence that always needs verifiable proof, as you're effectively telling someone that they have broken our most sacred of laws, literally, as it was a pact that is not just between the nation itself, but between the nation and Luna. So always make sure that you clarify that it is always a possibility rather than what has happened.
Of course, Ryan.
I should also note that in many ways, a lot of what we do can be considered potential breaches later down the line, or future breaches. Potential implies that it has already happened but has yet to be ruled upon. Potential future breaches would perhaps be the most accurate and safe phrase to use.
Or perhaps may lead to.
May lead to, yes. It's also a safe phrase. Because of our nature as mediators and diplomats, wording is extremely important, as we are effectively dealing in legalese in our own strange way. I would like you to go down what you have written, and please explain to me why each specific potential breach you could note, how the actions you have witnessed could come to a potential breach, because it was not necessarily elaborated on in the note why it could lead to such breaches of the litany.
I'd be happy to, Ryan. May I please have the letter? Sorry.
No problem. Putting the letter in chat for you so you know what you've written. There you go.
Thank you.
He just hands you a note. He remains seated on the table.
Oh, there's a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, just for the sake of time, could I get you to read it out loud? And it'll be like Joe's reading.
Yep. Jake will just say, respect those of lower station. Oh, sorry. Jacob expressing the belief that the feud between Will and Felix Ra may be on the verge of being litany breaching. In the note cited, number 1, respect those of lower station for all of Gaia, emphasizing the all of Gaia part. The reason I cite this right is I feel that in doing what what he did in the way he did it, Will Rye has potentially begun to craft a schism between not just himself and Felix Rye, but potentially between the Sept and the Glasswalker tribe.
Joe will actually say this out loud, like he's reading this out loud. And he said, tied to the tree, the way, the method in which he voiced his opinion was extremely public and extremely direct, and there did not seem to be any sort of allowances for the importance of the Walker tribe and what they do. Effectively, from what I understood, because of the lack of the aforementioned situation, he did seem to be potentially inadvertent or otherwise be initiating something that could turn into a long-standing conflict, which, like many other things, like a drop in the water creates ripples, and so on and so forth.
This is perhaps the part of the note that I take the most issue with, as part of the right of the moot is that whoever possesses the bone may speak freely. While he made his intent public, and it may cause conflict with the tribe, although I'd argue it was directed much more towards Felix in particular, rather than the Glasswalker tribe in general. I'm not even sure he mentioned the Glasswalker tribe by name.
But nor did
a moot point.
But nor did he mention Felix by name. However, the method in which he
noted the group that made the deal with the Weaver, which Felix was a part of. My point being is that there are many long-standing conflicts within the nation. A conflict within and of itself is not a litany breach. Especially since Felix and William are of equal station, and no one here is of lower station.
However, each and all is of Gaia and thereby important to Gaia. So in the interest of preventing something from happening, that's why I put that in the letter and sent it to you, you being a far more experienced fellow dogs.
I understand. The problem with the argument being made is that it would set the precedent that having a political dispute is in effect breaking the litany, could potentially lead to a conflict later down the line. Which, while this would benefit my tribe immensely, is not applicable or enforceable. In fact, such an application would do more to divide the nation than bring it together. As
that was certainly not my intention.
No, understandably not. But that's effectively what is being implied. That because someone was honest in what they said, as was their right at the moot to say, that because this hit someone's nerve, that it could cause a conflict between two parties, that is a litany breach, in which it isn't. We are inherently creatures of conflict and built to handle conflict. And I would dare say that if these two individuals did have a conflict with each other, that they would one would challenge the other. If they didn't, disputes are resolved.
I think, by and large, I think that it might be a good idea to give them a venue to do that, which is later expressed in the note, Ryan. But I do see your point, and I apologize for any misunderstanding.
I would say ultimately you have a point in that you spotted a dispute, and it would be wise to resolve it in some fashion, perhaps, before it hits a tipping point. However, from what I know, and I know both of these individuals personally, especially William, but it has not escalated to anything significant. And if that dispute itself appears to not have gone any further, as William has taken his intentions to the Wormfoe, and the Wormfoe has permitted him to do, permitted him and his pack to do as they will on the issue of the Weaver. As I believe this is where the dispute originated, but even if there is a conflict, you don't need to feel the need to get involved in every dispute. Some Garou will take offense to this and may worsen it. It's a matter of timing.
Which is also, with respect, which is also why I just wrote it down and intended to share with you what my viewpoints were, just in case you may have concurred with anything I said, rather than saying it out loud and potentially cause a problem.
The reason I give you that warning is because by the way you've written the note and the way you're speaking now, you appear to feel quite strongly regarding the issue, which isn't wrong at all. But it is worth noting that you should be prepared to mediate and not dictate. And that if someone rejects mediation, be careful how you involve yourself, and to make sure not to force the issue too hard. Mediate, don't dictate, is a good motto. You should only force such an issue when it becomes absolutely necessary. For example, as I'm sure you're aware, there was effectively a riot. No, there was literally a riot on set between kinfolk recently.
I apologize for not being there, Raya. I would have wanted to help. I was just not in a healthy state of mind.
You would not have been able to do anything under those circumstances anyway. I don't begrudge you either way.
I would have wanted to help if I could have.
That's noted. But the point is that the Philodoxes was to mediate, and the kinfolk rejected this. However, because of the danger of the situation and the amount of potential bloodshed involved, we forced the issue. Or rather, I should say, I forced the issue. This is not a very conventional form of mediation, as effectively they ended up scattering in about 80 different directions after I was finished with them. Another example I could give you is that there was recently a conflict between two packs. One member of a pack was assaulted by another, and I've decided to intervene in order to mediate. Now, I trust the two alphas can actually resolve the issue fairly amicably. I'm merely there to provide a forum of discussion and to be a neutral judge for any potential breaches of litany involved, which I don't necessarily believe there to be. But because it involves two guru from very different tribes, have a long-standing history of conflict, and also the fact that we want to, violence has already occurred and we want to mitigate the potential for pack warfare, I've decided to intervene to make sure that such conflict. However, in this instance, I am merely present. I will not be saying much unless I have to. I expect the two alphas to resolve the issue themselves. The second part, I believe... My apologies, I skipped ahead a little bit, but I believe I've made my point.
You have,
that
right.
one should be careful to mediate rather than to dictate, and only intervene when it's offered to intervene, but remember when you have to. Learn that balance, because you'll have to in the days to come, especially right now. You also said, because of the ripples and conflict this could lead to, this could be suffer not by people to suffer by weakness. But you interpreted it as a weakness to see an issue resolved.
No, right. That wasn't good.
It's literally what it states on the note.
The weakness I'm sorry, I'm out of character. That was also some out of character confusion. I'm sorry. Yes, Raya. I felt that if the issues were not handled, especially with each individual having friends on their side from other packs and other guru, it would eventually cascade into a veritable flight of passion on a potentially large scale, or at least that was my observation.
Oh. I'm relieved to inform you that the cohesion of the nation won't be put at risk by two angry Cleophs. But more importantly, this is how to put this, a very, 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 very liberal interpretation of this part of the litany, at best. Sickness has always been interpreted as literal sickness, not as in a dispute, a conflict, which is...
Or lack thereof, Raya. Because I do feel if someone is hesitant or holds on to the source of what is angering them, for a reason that is their own, without allowing it to be resolved, that in itself could also be a weakness.
Well, the tenet states sickness, not weakness.
Well, a form of sickness, which is in some respect, it's an emotional sickness.
I would argue it's not a form of emotional sickness at all, because it doesn't fit the definition of sickness. either under the dictionary term or even under general terms. While you could argue it's problematic for the set to have two clears at each other's throats, or more, opposing political views, because that's effectively what it is. I've actually spoken with William about this issue. They oppose each other politically, but that doesn't mean there is an emotional sickness. An ongoing dispute does not mean there is an emotional sickness. It means the dispute is simply unresolved and ongoing.
But if the issue leads to eventual hatred and mistrust, and we as a sept need to be able to trust each other, I feel, and something as significant as hatred could undermine that.
Hatred and mistrust is not a sickness, and if you were to interpret the litany in such a way, by the very virtue of our rage, are we all in breach of the litany? Not only this, but it is effectively thought crime. It is interpreting litany to enforce punishment upon others based on what-if scenarios that have not occurred. Just because something could happen doesn't mean someone should be punished on that basis. In fact, that is, well, again, not enforceable.
Oh, certainly not. Which is why, at the end of the letter, I was hoping that, if there was any element of what I perceived that you agreed with, we might be able to nip it in the bud before it became a problem.
And that's why I would encourage mediation. You don't need to attach breaches of the litany to this dispute unless there have been little breaches of the litany, or there is, I say, extreme risk of it happening, as in, this is not a doomsday scenario, as in it will literally happen right after this. Say someone threatens war. For example, I go back to my previous example. Talate Heen emitted a howl earlier. This escalated an issue that resulted in the riot that I had to defuse.
What kind of howl riot?
In response to a Uktenikin being murdered, for the Uktena to howl in, for the Pure Tribes to howl in fury and vengeance. Which, of course, led to the Uktena and the Pure Tribes in general, and their kin getting very, very angry and almost causing a riot. It did cause a riot, which would have led to a breach of the because someone was selling tools and the weaponry. But
Joe sort of covers his mouth in shock at this.
Needless to say, that was perhaps it would be easier for me to say when the outcome is obvious, you might intercede, but only and only then when the outcome is obvious and certain. Basing it on a slippery slope scenario isn't applicable because it's based on too many what-if scenarios and is based on events that haven't happened. A riot did happen. How she was not punished for, although she did undergo a rite of contrition to me because she felt guilty for it. But the riot had to be diffused because a riot happened.
Fair enough, Ryan.
As for, I won't go over the third part because it stems from my point of what-if scenarios and slippery slope logic. I believe is what the fallacy is called.
I wrote the letter with the understanding that these were basically our laws. I wrote the letter with that in mind. I do apologize if I wasn't perceiving things wide enough.
I believe you had the general right idea to mediate. You're just perhaps overeager, and that's why you attached potential breaches of friendship into it. Not every situation with a guru escalates so frantically because of that. Usually it's politics as usual. Since this took place at home, this is actually even more conventional. And it's a very safe place for people to speak their mind and resolve disputes. It's its purpose.
I see.
Um,
in which case I apologize a second time. I just care a lot for both of them, and I would hate to see. Well, in fact, I care a lot for a lot of the people here, and I would hate to see anything happen that could lead to people being hurt unnecessarily.
It's good that you had that qualifier. As I said, I believe you'd had the right idea. So it's, if nothing else, a promising sign. However, there is a grimmer issue I have to move on to. It has been notified to me. There's been you've made a fifth attempted runaway.
Okay, I've done a few things up here, Ron, and I'm coming down.
Now,
Right. Out of character, I'm sorry. I may have to leave soon, but let's.
Oh yeah, this is literally Jacob's final point. You attempted to run away from the set a fifth time. Now, I know what you're going. I'm not going to claim I understand what you're going through, but I know what it is. And as someone of my more mundane profession, I understand why you run away. Because it's not necessarily your choice in the most strict sense. But I can only be so lenient, and while your condition does garner my empathy and understanding, it cannot be used as a justification.
And Joe says, well, he says this kind of sadly. I understand completely, Raya. And while I'm in my right mind for now, I am in complete agreement, and I accept any punishment. I make no excuses.
Well then, I'd ask that you pay attention, because this is something you'll most likely be carrying out in your own philodoxing career. It takes out a little rock. It's not a rock, it's stone. It's a little bit jagged. It's not like a pebble. It has sharp edges. Although it is natural looking. It has a sigil on it. This is a stone of scorn. It's one of our many shaming rites. One of our more common ones. Usually used for more minor crimes.
I'm down, Ollie.
Joe actually.
Yeah.
Sorry. Joe actually stands up shakily. You can actually see him visibly shake as he's standing. And he just approaches and he goes down to one knee and he bows so that you can put the stone around his neck.
I don't think it puts a stone on your neck. I think that's part of it right. Although I can. Look up
the object.
Yeah, I'm just looking up the role and specific. Here we go. Yeah, so it's yeah, so it has some sigils on it, some little markings, glyphs. The glyph on it is shame, and as he walks up to you, he
You actually don't have to walk. Joe's actually made it really easy for you.
oh no. What he's doing is, because this is a bit more complicated than him just applying the stone to you. You actually notice now that he does actually have like one of his hands is kind of turned into a glabro claw. One of his fingers has turned into a glabro claw. So he begins carving into it. And he begins to recite your failings to you. Or rather, to the stone itself, actually. Not to you. Although you understand why this is. Because most likely there is some sort of spiritual connection to the stone. Because you have common sense. It goes on for a while. Well, for a few minutes. Of him going into rather stark detail of what you've done, why it was bad, how this has happened, how you failed. And it's rather derogatory. It's not polite. It's rather cutting. It's not mocking. Not this time. But it is very brutal in its assessment.
Joe looks ashamed.
If you continue carving the stone for the next 5 minutes, with each runaway attempt he describes, including the one where you actually escaped and came back.
Including what?
Including the time where you actually got out and came back. He carves an additional symbol into it, an additional glyph of shame. And then you kind of feel that shame wash over for you for a moment. And Jacob kind of puts the stone on the table. I will roll. Extra dice roller. I just need to quickly... Oh, crap, this is wrong. There you go. I need to roll 6d10. 7 F1. Actually, say wall power expenditure. R60 10. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. I'm still fine. Oh, no, 7 F1. 7. Yeah, as he succeeds. The punishment does in fact take place. The spirits do shame you. This day, as he puts a stone on the table. Normally this ritual lasts all night, but there's no one else here. If that is all, you are dismissed. Please learn from this and make sure it doesn't happen again. Because now we're at a point where this is going to be escalating.
Am I to take the stone with me, Ryan?
He casually tosses it towards you. I believe, OC, I believe you're allowed. I don't think it affects the ritual anyway. So yeah, he allows you to claim the stone of your shame. Actually, yeah, you're literally claiming your shame. So in a way, yeah, this would almost be encouraged. So, yeah, he kind of casually tosses it in your direction.
Joe accepts it. What is required of me regarding this riot?
It's simple. You're not to leave the sept again without explicit permission. This is why you're escorted. Because this is the 5th time this has happened. And as I said, well, I understand why. And I understand that it's not easy. In fact, it's extremely difficult. At the best of times. You're a guru now. This can't keep happening. And if it keeps happening, it's only going to get worse for you.
Please understand, and I can say this while I'm in my right mind, I don't want it to.
I know.
And Joe will bow and excuse and take his stone.
Yeah. Reminder, perhaps.
See, I have to go, but please feel free to wrap.
Oh yeah, no, we can close the scene now. As Joe takes his pendant, perhaps his reminder if he's ever tempted to run away again. Or that he should not. Why he should not. We all close the scene there as he leaves, and Jacob returns to the inside of his cabin to return to his own plans and agendas, and we'll wrap the scene up there. Thank you, player, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. We'll see you next time.